And okay, so what will happen is this will be up in an hour. Everybody will get to see it, but we've talked, so it's the same as going live, it's just that it's being recorded. So we've just spent a number of moments talking. It's interesting how even though I'm an endodontist from Toronto, and you obviously have been through many countries, we know, interestingly enough, some of the same people. They went to Toronto, Dr. Melcher you mentioned, Dr. Tenkati. Basically, paths cross, and I had no idea about them, but obviously they've been very instrumental in your life. So it begins here, which is why I put this up, okay, the background. That's where you were born, right? This is, what is it? It's in Transylvania? Is this Transylvania?
Yes. Transylvania is a part of Romania, is
Uh-huh.
the middle part of the Carpathians. So you know the Dracula movies?
Shh, we can't talk about that because everybody, no, we can't do that. You know, Bela Lugosi, no. That could be very impacting. Don't want to affect your career by saying that you came from where Dracula was born. That would not be a good thing. So here's what we're going to do. All right, I'm going to basically take you for a walk. You have this enormously diverse life. You were born in Romania, then you went to Germany, and then you went back to Hungary. So the last few days, I've been speaking to people who were born in Romania. Claudia Coca, Joseph Leibovicki, there's an entire group of Romanian dentists now. Anna Gabriela has formed it. And they all basically say the same thing. If they were born at a certain time, they lived with Ceausescu and what that did to their lives. In some cases, maybe better for others, but in your case, it wasn't good. You did not start off happy when you were a kid. So can you talk about that, Tony? Can you give us a sense of what it was like to be born there? And
I'm not born there is, it was very, very nice because the environment with the friends, with the family, and it kind of multicultural environment at Hungarians, Romanians, Germans, all kind of different nationalities speaking different languages. So it was very nice. Of course, apart from the political situation,
right,
but the personal situation was and the interaction was very nice, and this gave us also kind of spiritual strength for the future. I think
really,
that this is very important.
yes,
Yeah, and of course, if you consider all the other things that you were suppressed by the political regime, you didn't have contact with other countries. It was forbidden to pass the borders to visit even Hungary or other even some other socialistic countries. So this was not so nice.
right,
But on the other hand, the 70s, the situation was not that bad, but it deteriorated fast towards the end. And in the 80s, it was really worse and worse. And this was also one of the reasons why, let's say, intellectual people wanted to leave the country
right.
because you couldn't express your views openly, and you had to follow a certain pattern dictated by the government. Yeah, and that's why my father decided to leave the country. It was in '79. It was he was a kind of political refugee because he was a teacher at the university. He taught prosthodontics, and we were waiting for almost 4 years to get
Really.
permission to leave the country. Yeah.
Somebody told me the story the other day that in order to get out in some countries, they were bought. The country paid for them to come. Is that realistic?
Yes, if you had some German roots, then Germany paid a certain amount, probably, but it was not a direct payment by the persons. It was, I think, on a governmental level.
Interesting. So what they call bakshish, corruption, quid pro quo, stuff like that?
No, no. I mean, was an official deal between Ceausescu and Germany. This is one not bought. Backstreet is something additional. You know, this was the this was the official fee.
Okay, I got it. I got it. So Mrs. Chescu could buy dresses and shoes. Was that how that worked?
Yes, I don't know what he did. Probably he put the money in some Swiss banks.
Yeah, I would think so. So your dad was in Germany for 4 years before you could get.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Almost 4 years. So we left the country in 82.
right.
He left, I mean, at the end of 82. And so he left at the middle of 79. So 3.5 years, roughly.
So I've asked the same question of other people who have immigrant stories, as it were.
Yeah.
He has to have spoken some German, correct?
Yeah. I spoke some German, but it was fluent, but with a lot of mistakes because at home we were speaking Hungarian and of course Romanian as well. And then I went to a Romanian school and I knew some basic German to follow a conversation, but not to go to school and to write and to speak.
So how does he go from Romania to Germany, start a practice, work for 3 years? He ought to have spoken some German, but he needed to get a license unless there was reciprocity. He had to set up a practice. He wasn't German, he was Romanian, and I don't know whether there are issues with those connections, but he has to go to work, establish a practice, get patients in. And I keep saying the same thing. You're coming from another country. I know what it's like here. It's not easy to do. I mean, it's.
It was, especially for my father, probably it was very difficult because he had a good position at the university, but then he gave it up, and then because he went to a congress to Germany and he didn't come back. So that's why they also wanted to punish his family by not letting them out. That's why we had to wait for 3.5 years for the passport. And then he worked in several practices as a kind of as an employee dentist before opening his own practice. But the diploma was accepted and still is. In Europe, it's easier. So it is not the same when you go to, for example, to US or Canada, because there you have to study again, I think, 2 or 3 years and to take your exams. But in Europe, the diploma was accepted. So it was not a problem of getting work permit.
So they kept you in the country as a way of punishing him for 3 years because he basically sought asylum. So what were they just preventing you from getting a passport, or were they making your life difficult?
Yes, I mean they just declined giving the passport. So they just said, okay, it's not the right time. You have to wait for another year. You have to wait for another year.
Wow.
And so it was not funny. So I went to the school there, but in the last year they kicked me out from the school.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I opened my mouth too often, criticizing them. So they told me, okay, it's better if you don't come to school.
Wow.
So it was better because, I could go twice daily to the gym. And of course, from an intellectual point of view, maybe it was not so good, but I could do a lot of sports. So.
What did you do? What did you play? What was your favorite sport? What were you enjoying at that time?
I enjoyed bodybuilding.
No way! Seriously?
Of course.
So do you look like Arnold Schwarzenegger for a while? Is that what was going on?
No, but I did some competitions. Yeah, I'm still doing a lot of training. Yeah, that's why we are friends with Rick Myron, huh? Because he's
a bodybuilder.
Of course.
I didn't know that. I thought he just grew a lot of hair, like he has curly hair.
I have to tell you a good story about him. How I hired him.
Okay. Let's get to Germany. Okay, so you're on your way to Germany. We'll get to Rick in a minute because Rick really got his beginning with you. You made him famous.
Of course.
Of course. So you go to Germany with your dad. You want to become a
No, no,
dentist.
no.
Oh,
With my
oh,
mother.
with your mother, right?
Yeah, my father was already in Germany, so I was with my mother. Yeah,
The family comes, you and your mom, everybody hooks up, reconnects, and then you decide, I don't want to stay here and go to school. I want to go back to or want to go to Hungary to Semmelweis.
yeah,
Now, I don't know much about Semmelweis, but I do know that it's like going to an Ivy League school in America,
yeah.
right? It's, Heidelberg, Semmelweis, it's all, that's really,
Mhm.
you don't get in there because your father donates a building, right? You get in there because you've got the academic wherewithal. So what was going on? How did you get into Semmelweis? What were you doing to get
I,
the
I
degree?
applied. I applied there, and I was accepted. And also, I have a lot of relatives in Hungary,
Okay.
and this was also one of the reasons that I wanted to go there. I liked Budapest a lot, and also my grandfather studied in the same university, but he
Okay.
studied pharmacy,
Okay.
about 60 years before.
So you,
So
so you
yeah,
go there and you're in dental school, all right, and you said things just started to click. Obviously you practice still. You go, you have patients every day, but somehow the switch turned on. There was the light went on, and suddenly research made a lot of sense to you, like
yeah.
a lot of sense to you. So a mentor, just you like to play with test tubes. What happened?
I enjoyed first of all anatomy
Hmm.
because I found it very biological, and started to understand how the human body starts to function or
Hmm.
functions. I mean, you never understand it completely, but I mean it is fascinating, and this was one of the reasons why I entered this path, because then I started also to learn more about histology, and I also liked a lot working on these sections, to learn the different staining methods, and look at the tissues and make the difference between healthy and diseased. And so this was all something that follows me during all
All
my
your life.
career.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, question: you're a bodybuilder and you like anatomy. Is there a correlation between the two? Is that why you decided to get into anatomy, histology? Because here you're building yourself up and you want to know what's going on inside. Is
Yeah.
that what?
I mean, there's a connection definitely, because um, you start to understand what, how the body functions, how the muscles function, how I mean the way on how you have to keep your diet, and what is going to happen with the different nutrients that you take,
So you
etc.
still do that? You still like are really health conscious? You do all that kind of stuff?
I'm training about 3 to 5 days a week.
What?
Yeah,
Well, wait a minute. You're doing major research. You look after students. You obviously are very head of a huge lab. You are multi-center testing all around the world, and you still find time to do things 3 to 5 days a week to
yeah.
lift weights.
About 4 times a week weights, and then maybe 1 2 times I go for a run,
So how much weight can you lift?
depending
Um,
for which exercise.
okay,
But
bicep curls.
not so much. Maybe I'm doing some sets with 50 to 60 kilograms,
Okay, chest
10,
press.
120 kilograms.
Okay, power lift.
Maybe 70, 80.
Jeez, look at you.
But the squat is even better, 160 kilograms,
No
even.
way, hundreds. Oh, wait a minute, you're talking about kilograms, not pounds.
No, kilograms. It's double, huh? You have to multiply it with two.
Just my brain wasn't working for a minute. 2.2 times. Holy. Wait a minute. Wait a minute. 160 kilograms is
20 pounds.
300
Yeah,
pounds. Is that right? 300 and some odd pounds.
yes.
And you power lift 300. You squat rather. You squat 300 pounds, 350
No,
pounds.
no. Yeah. That's not so much. Yeah, I'm even doing it. I'm doing reps.
Okay, I don't want to talk to you anymore because you could probably kill me by going like this. Could break me. Holy cow! Look at you. That's unbelievable. Wow. Do you still do competition?
I want to do a comeback maybe next year.
Are your students
In a
afraid of
month.
you? Are your
In,
students afraid of you at all? Like, do they see you walk in looking like Schwarzenegger? Do they worry about if they don't do well, you could sort of like do crazy things? No,
nobody can beat me in squats, for
nobody
sure.
can beat you in.
Among my students, I mean.
Okay, fair enough. I got it. So we're like you. Okay, we'll talk about what you're doing in a minute. But you and Marco Esposito are like this. Who can write the most papers in the course of their lifetime?
We are good friends with Marco.
But you don't have a competition about the number of papers?
I only compete with myself, huh?
Uh-huh, uh-huh. Except he's still behind you.
But that's normal. He doesn't do bodybuilding, huh?
Here's the problem. So we have to call him and say, Marco, get it together. That's
This is
amazing.
a secret. This is a secret, you know.
It's a secret. Okay. So he's written, I forget what he told me. He said it looks like 500, but when you distill it down, it was 200 and I think he said 280. So you're 100 more than he is.
I mean, if you go now to PubMed, I have 381 publications on PubMed.
381 publications.
This is the, I mean, today's number. But I have still 5 or 6 papers coming in.
So explain something to me. Okay, I'd never seen this, which doesn't mean a great deal, but the H index on Google Scholar is 76 and on Web Science is 55. So what is the H index? That's productivity, referencing, that sort of thing?
I mean, for example, if you have an H index of 77, it means that you have 77 papers that were cited 77 times. If you have an H index of 100, then you have at least 100 papers that were cited at least 100 times.
Okay. So between you and your students, at any given moment in time, how many papers do you have on the go?
What do you mean?
So you've got a certain time cycle, right? You're writing papers. Your students are writing papers. You have to review your papers. I know you've got a paper on the go with Sophia, with Kati. You got like multi-center students, you personally, at any given moment in time, how many papers are being written on your desk?
I mean, I work in parallel. We have maybe 5 or 6 papers that are working in parallel. Okay, I'm correcting many of them, or I'm the senior author and try to guide the research, and then I will correct the papers. In some papers, when I'm the senior author, is my material, but I write a great deal of the paper. It depends on the papers. Yeah.
So your papers have an enormous range. I just want to talk about that before we get to Rick, because Rick is Canadian. I want to talk about Rick. That's important. Because this is like the second or third day Canada has been referenced. So your papers with Rick are in 2000, 2013, which is when he's in Bern. He comes from Nova, and he comes to Bern to do his work. So just to look at what you're doing, which is mind-blowing. A lot of it is focused on periodontal regeneration, right?
Yeah.
So periodontal regeneration to me means grafting and this, that, and the other. But in your case, it means a great deal more. Lasers, photodynamic therapy, various chemicals, endogain, osteogain. So you've got I love this. Taurolidine gel, which is used with photodynamics, I believe. Is that correct?
Well, that's an antiseptic.
Antiseptic, yeah. Okay, so you've got new formulations underway, collagen matrices. You're covering soup to nuts, my friend. You go from alpha to omega, right? Now, so you've got all of these things operational. How do you keep them straight? Like, how do you keep them in your head? All these balls are in the air all the time. How? How do you do this?
I mean, we have, I divided my department in different groups. Mm-hmm. So they have different projects, and I try to coordinate. So we have, for example, I have a laboratory of oral histology
Hmm.
with a famous professor who is working there, is Dieter Boshart, who was also trained partly also in Canada. And then I have a laboratory of oral microbiology with Professor Ike. She's working on antiseptics and antibiotics, photodynamic therapy in the lab. Then we have a laboratory of cell biology where Rick was trained and he worked there
Hmm.
in the older days with Reinhard Gruber also. And now we have another lady running that lab is Maria Sparuhova, but we still work together also with Rick. And then of course we have the clinical part in the department where I have a part that is getting along with the postgraduate education. That's Gianni Salvi, Professor Salvi, who is taking care of that part. And then we have the undergraduate part that is Dr. Ramsayer, who is taking care of the undergraduate students. And then we have um, also the clinical research, where I have Alexandra Steli. She's very, very well controlling all the clinical research. And of course, also I have the part in coordinating all this. And then we have also our international collaborations with other countries like Japan, like Romania, like Hungary, like Poland, like Denmark, now Sweden, UK. And I can coordinate this very well. So I think that's quite important to have also this capacity of over looking at things.
That was my next question. I'll get to it in a minute. Do you have the Department of Kinesiology so that when you want to take a break, you can go down and lift weights?
No, I do it in the gym here. It's not that far. Bern is very small, and I have also a gym at home.
So did they dedicate the gym in the school and the university to you? Is it the Toni Sculean name gym? Gymnasium? Is that how that works?
Not yet. But
Not
yeah,
yet. It's coming.
not yet.
Okay, fair enough. So the immediate question is, you've done all this research, an enormity of topics. You have the skill set of an MBA. You are basically a leader. You empower people to work for you. You stimulate them. The enormous diversity of what you have to understand in order to engage with them and write these papers on an ongoing basis. So explain the secret, my friend. What is the secret sauce that makes you this accomplished, this incredibly talented, and this, I mean, you're keeping a zillion balls in the air. How is this possible? You're the chairman of the Department of Periodontology, the executive director of the School of Dental Medicine. You've got undergrad, postgrad, labs working all over the place. How does this happen, Toni? Like what is it? I mean, and you're doing research, and you're writing textbooks, and you're doing 500 some odd presentations over the course of your lifetime. I mean, seriously. I mean, how? How does this happen? What's the secret?
I think first of all you need to have a passion for things, because if you don't like it, you cannot get to a certain level. And then of course you have to have a vision of what you want to accomplish. And I always wanted to be one of the best in my field.
Okay.
Because otherwise it is meaningless to start something in my philosophy. So you have to focus on your on your vision, because you have to have a goal in your mind, and you have to work in small steps towards that goal. And of course, it is also important that you have a team, and you have a team that sticks to you, and you have to motivate them, and they have to trust you, because you have to give them back something. I think everything what we accomplished is not that's in my work, but is the work of a team, because we have collaboration since almost 30 years with many people. And if they wouldn't trust me, or we wouldn't trust each other, it wouldn't work. Then maybe it works for 1 year and then you don't work with these people any longer. So it means that it is a matter of give and take, trust, vision, and give back something to your friends, to your coworkers, and this is the only way to move on, and also to select the talents, and once you selected some of them, to motivate them and to give them also goal, because in this way they will work also hard, and they will also give back something to the whole team. I think this is as a whole spirit that has to be formed in this way.
So how long did it take you to do this, Tony? Like, I mean, this didn't happen yesterday. So this is obviously years and years and years of just continuing to do this.
I mean, it happened already in Hungary, where I was an undergraduate student, and then I was um, having my first contacts with research, and some of my colleagues are now the professors there. Like Peter Windisch is the professor in Budapest, in Semmelweis, professor of periodontology. And then I moved to Denmark, to Aarhus, to Torkel Karing, who was really one of the biggest brain, the more brilliant brains in periodontology. He invented soft tissue grafting, guided tissue regeneration, guided bone regeneration. He was one of the most creative mentors, and there we had we were lucky to have him, and we were also a very good team of young postgraduates, like Nikos Donos was one of my colleagues. He's now the chairman in London. Nikos Mardas and many, and Andreas Stavropoulos is now the professor in Sweden, and we still are good friends, and we support each other. And I think this is very important. So then we moved back I moved back into Germany and continued working with Denmark, with Sweden, with Hungary, also with some colleagues from Romania. And when I moved them to Switzerland, I just collected all this, continued these contacts, and tried to give my philosophy also to the younger generation. And this was also how young people from other parts of the world, like Canada, like for example Japan, or Hungary, Romania, came to me, and I just supported them. And then one step after the other. So
Can you?
it's a spirit, you know.
It is obviously. Do you think what you started to do when you were a kid? I don't mean this facetiously. You have a competitive streak, but a positive one, right? You're constantly challenging yourself, obviously. Because you have a private practice, you could have, done administration, done a few papers, but you're not doing a few. Everything is a superlative. 300, 500, 380 citations, students, like lecture, so it's just, the numbers are huge. They're monstrous. So how much of that is related to your 350 squats? I mean, seriously. And you want to go back to competition. How much of this relates? Was your dad like this? Was your dad competitive?
Yeah, he was also competitive. Maybe not as much as me, but he was really competitive. Yeah.
So you wanted to weightlift. How much of this, I'm not going to say competition because it's teamwork, obviously. You're not competing at a contest. It's a team. But when you started to do all this, is this what fired you up? Is this fact that you were always challenging yourself to do something, and now you are not only challenging yourself, you're challenging others?
I think I like to do things at a higher level, so at the highest level, and if I start to do something, I don't want to stop until I do not accomplish the maximum what I can accomplish.
Okay.
So I do the same when I write a paper, when I do the project, when I'm doing my training. I never finish one set until I can move. Huh? If you still can do 2 reps, then you failed.
Wow.
When you feel that you cannot do any more, then you have to do 2 more.
I have to stop you for a second.
You know, I mean, I,
Wait. Hold it for a minute here.
this is just a
No,
philosophy.
they're very black and white. I mean, there's no shades of gray in all this, right? It's either 0 or 100%. Like, that's pretty fascinating. And why that's intriguing is you obviously have your own 100%. Like, obviously, you challenge yourself to you literally collapse. Well, not collapse, but you certainly fatigue. If you can't do another rep, your muscles have said, that's enough, stop. But how do you make your 100% work with other people whose 100% is obviously very different than yours? That's a massive construct. Like, leadership at that level is very, very frightening, because I mean, you have to be on all the time because you know what the other person's 100% is.
Yes, but I mean, this is also a matter of recognizing the level of people, because this is different and you cannot compare everybody to yourself. I think this would be the wrong way to lead a team. So they have to perform according to their own capacities or capabilities, you know, and also motivation, talents, etc. So not everybody has the same level of motivation or the same priorities in life, but they can be very efficient in their path, in their way. So I think the secret is to recognize this and give them also the freedom and guide them, of course, in the same time to go into a certain direction, because they can be very efficient for the whole team and very useful for the whole team. I don't want that everybody is doing the same what I'm doing, because this would be the wrong message, because then I would be left alone. You know,
left in the dust.
but there are some crazy guys like Rick and some others. I have another Japanese guys that can work until their limits, but not everybody. So we have to put the right person in the right position and give them the chance to run. Huh?
So tell me about Rick. You had some interesting stories. Rick is Canadian, which makes him brilliant right out of the box. You know, we know that he's a superstar before he starts. He goes to the University of Western Ontario. He does molecular biology. He then goes to Nova in Florida. And suddenly he decides that he wants to go do I guess it was molecular biology. Is that what he was doing with you in Bern?
No, but it was before he went to Nova.
Okay.
He came to me because
you first.
Yeah, he came first to Bern. So what I started here in 2008, and I think 1 year later I received an email from a guy called Rick Myron, and he asked me whether he could come over to Bern in order to get a PhD. And in fact, I was thinking that this is a spam, because he just said, "Hi, I'm Rick. I have a grant from the Canadian government. Can I come over to do a PhD with you?"
So did he want you to match the money? Was it like a thing from Nigeria? Did he say, "I have a grant. If you match the money, I'll come"?
No, but almost. I mean, that, yeah, I have a grant from the Canadian government. I read your papers. I would like to learn from you. I read your papers about Emdogain. Then I say, okay, if you really want it, come over and let's have a talk. So he said, okay. He took the plane. He came over. We met at the university, but you know, I was really thinking that this guy, I mean, is a kind of spam, so he will not come anyway. But I said, okay. We made an appointment, and he came over with his father. We had the talk, and I saw that he's a very big guy. He's 190 tall, and he had huge muscles.
Oh, so that was the immediate attraction, right?
He's
in no matter what,
yeah.
you know?
Then I asked him, okay, what are you doing in your spare time? And he said, okay, I'm doing some training. I said, okay, because you look like Lou Ferrigno. You know, he was a famous bodybuilder competitor. I said,
He was the Hulk.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. You look like Lou Ferrigno. Ah, yes, I like this this movie. And then I asked him, are you doing some bodybuilding training? And he said, yes. Do you like Pumping Iron? You know, the very famous movie with Arnold.
But with Schwarzenegger, of course.
Yeah. Yeah, and he said, yes. Then I was very surprised. Okay, did you see pumping iron? He said yes. Then I asked him, okay, what happened in the Mr. Olympia competition 1975? And he gave me the right answer about the three first guys that were ranked, Arnold and Lou Ferrigno and these guys. And I said, okay, so this guy is telling the truth. So I told him, okay, you are hired. You can start.
You didn't even know if he understood anything about you're in molecular biology. You know about this much, but
Yeah,
you can pump on.
that was the interview. A quite unusual one, no?
Absolutely, totally. So how long was he with you? How long
So
did this
we
PhD?
started, I think, in 2009. We finished the PhD, I think, in 2012. But we did, I think, now we have more than almost 60 papers together.
Mm-hmm.
And then he decided to study dentistry. You know, when he
Wait a
finished
minute.
the
He
PhD.
wasn't a dentist? I didn't know that.
He wasn't a dentist. He was a biologist.
Okay.
He did a PhD in molecular biology, cell
Right.
biology. And then he decided to be a dentist because he said, okay, I like your recession coverage. I want to do the same. And then he decided to go back to Canada, to Laval. He studied dentistry over there.
Mm-hmm.
And he was traveling also back and forth to Bern, studying dentistry, doing some research with me, doing some research there. So we wrote a lot of papers, developed osteogain also in some projects, a new material for bone regeneration. And then after he finished dental school, he came back to Bern for 2 more years. He was the head of the cell biology laboratory. We appointed him. And after that, he decided to go to NOAA. So it was like that, you know?
And then he came back. Well, he just got a huge grant from the Canadian government
Yeah,
again. And
yeah,
now he's got everything set up. So the question is, you said something interesting. He's the PRF guru right now. Nelson
yeah,
Pinto, Garg,
yeah, yeah,
Marks, now Myron.
yeah.
So he's, like he said, I was asking when I spoke to him, like, how did you come up with your machine? So he goes, it's a centrifuge, like nothing fancy, it's horizontal, not vertical. But he has become obviously he's really one of the most sought after people in the world.
Yeah.
First of all, he's a pussycat. He's like a teddy bear, right? He's got the hair, he's got the muscles. He's just like the sweetest guy going. He's also doing like you. You taught him well. He's got networks here, he's got networks there, he's got people he works with. Like he's obviously a very approachable, very giving and generous individual. So you did teach him very well, like he learned. So 60 papers later, I'm sorry, I do have to interrupt you because you mentioned bone regeneration as well as periodontal. I always thought you have to put in screws and tent it because it was really hard to get like vertical and the bone regen. Like you guys are developing stuff that is not craft related. It's different. Is that what I'm hearing you say?
No, I mean, if you deal with periodontal regeneration, you don't focus necessarily on grafts. You focus on certain proteins that may trigger the periodontal ligament to grow. I think this is very important, and that's why we focused on enemiemetics proteins. Then we had some studies on hyaluronic acid.
Yes.
That could be very promising, and of course with Rick on PRF. And we still move on in these projects to get some new ideas, to have new indications, to have it more precise, more efficient. But of course, some bone grafting materials are also important, but these are more important in implant dentistry. I mean, in bigger augmentations. For smaller perio defects, I think that the proteins are more efficient and the surgical technique itself.
So you got into lasers as well. Rick doesn't talk about lasers, at least not to my knowledge. You are using erbium
Yeah.
ERG. Is it erbium YAG lasers that you're using?
I have got involved in the laser business. When I was in Germany already in 1999 or even earlier, and then I had my first student that because I didn't believe in lasers at all. So I was thinking, okay,
No, you're in trouble
that,
now. The lawyers are coming, my friend.
yeah.
The lawyers are coming to
So,
the door.
so I was thinking, okay, if this device is really very efficient, let's do a study. So I did the first studies comparing conventional instrumentation with laser, with the erbium mag laser, and I was surprised to see that the results are quite comparable. So we did some further studies. One of my students was Frank Schwartz. He's also a very famous guy in implant dentistry.
Hmm?
He's on the third rank in citations in the world. And we
Is
did
that
a,
is that a problem for you? You
no,
guys
no,
fight it out?
no, I'm very happy if all my
Yeah.
students are coming up. I mean, this speaks to for the teacher,
But you're
huh?
like you're the father. You're like the
Yeah,
father of all these
yeah.
people. That's
And
amazing.
then we started also with photodynamic therapy, and I think we have some specific indications where we can use these devices. So I think is a very nice way of maybe getting not completely rid, but diminishing the use of antibiotics. Um, and I think we can integrate them in different in different treatment concepts.
So how much of this, like the clinical application, are you involved in protocols for grafts, like in terms of connective tissue grafting? Does this
Yes.
all impact on what you're doing?
Yeah. I mean, we are doing some studies on where we try to better understand how the graft is working, which component of the graft has more growth factors, which component of the graft may enhance epithelialization and so on. So there are some issues that we don't quite understand. So that's why we are running some studies. But soft tissue grafting is one of my favorite topics.
Okay.
And of course, we are also working on some new materials, some new soft tissue replacement materials. Also with Pat Allen, we work on
Right.
new material like Novo Matrix and so on.
So this
Uh,
is not alloderm. He's moved beyond alloderm. He's not
yeah,
using.
it is a kind of alloderm, but for porcine origin. And then we have, of course, some other materials as well, like fibroguide, some mucoderm, etc. So we are trying to find the right indication for the materials and trying to diminish the need of autogenous grafts. Of course, autogenous graft is always the gold standard, but if you need to do a huge grafting or many different surgeries, I mean, these materials may help the patient,
Yes,
or
of course.
they reduce morbidity.
So how has COVID affected you right now?
I mean, in Switzerland, it was, I mean, we had lockdown for about 6 weeks, but I was every day in the university. We treated only emergency cases,
Hmm?
but about 4 weeks ago, we started normally.
So you went
Uh,
back to normal.
yeah, we came back to normal. We didn't have any single case in our dental school.
Okay.
I mean, one of our staff members was not affected or students. And I mean, we were anticipating maybe a higher number of cases, but luckily it was not. So in Bern, the situation was quite acceptable. But of course, we try to follow all the advices of the government, the regulations. I think this is very important.
So how's this going to affect you in terms of the way you obviously have networks? You've got people around the world. So you can continue to communicate online or by
Yeah.
whatever, email or Dropbox, whatever, but you're not going to be able to go out and actually see them. You won't be able to lecture. Like, is this going to have a very profound impact, not just on you, but on your students? They're trying to get their wings. They're obviously trying to get out and do it, right? So how is this going to impact upon them for the foreseeable future?
I mean, we learned a lot, because I was not very much online until, let's say, 2 months ago.
Right.
I didn't even have a Facebook account. Now I have a Facebook account since about 2 months.
Perio team.
I have also a Toni Sculean Perio team
Mm-hmm.
with some webinars, and we try to share um, some new information or maybe some videos, some stories, and I think maybe this will be the future also for certain meetings.
Yes.
Uh, Not completely online, but I think the mixture of virtual and also direct contact lectures. So I think we learned a lot, at least me personally, and we can accomplish quite a lot also with this Zoom meetings or Skype whatsoever. Because if I work, for example, with Rick in a project, he's doing the experiments in US, or we write a paper together, or we work with a Japanese group. Of course, imagine if they would fly over. This would cost a lot. It's very
Yeah.
tiring.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I try to pick up the positive things rather than the negative ones, and try to develop our own philosophy and way of teaching. Because also with the students, we gave, for the undergraduate students, we gave the lectures via Zoom,
Right.
and it was quite okay, I can tell you. And we had also some meetings also with the European Federation of Periodontology via Zoom, and I think it is very um, very successful. But of course, it is also important to have the personal contact to meet a certain person.
Right.
So you cannot do everything online. Sooner or later, you have to meet. Also, the social contacts, I think, is very important.
Right. So what was it like on the 28th when you did the lecture on high hyaluronic acid and mucogingival and periodontal surgery? So did you have to wear a tie?
No, I'm like that.
You were just like, you didn't have to get into a suit and tie. That's the nice part about not doing it in
I,
real.
I have in some lectures I had,
Did
but
you?
generally, yeah, in some of them, because I gave a couple of webinars, um, but I don't I think I didn't have
No,
a
only the
tie.
picture has a tie. You
Yeah,
didn't,
yeah,
the picture had a tie.
yeah, but usually not. And I had another one for the European Federation of Periodontology.
Right.
I don't I have to look it up. I don't remember whether I had a tie or not, or maybe a shirt.
No,
I
it's a shirt. It was a shirt. I'm
Okay.
looking at it. It was a shirt. So tell
Usually,
me,
I don't like to wear ties. I have a lot of ties, but everybody's giving me as a gift a tie, an Italian tie, and I have about 50 in my drawer, but I don't like ties at all. I
well,
would prefer to walk without ties.
you and I go to the same haberdasher. You like to wear black t-shirts and jeans. Look
Yeah.
at us. That's how you walk around with your lab coat. That's so cool. So what was the IADR award that you just got? You got a, where is this? This is recent, right?
Yeah, that was the last one. This is, in fact, one of the most important awards that you can get in dentistry. This is the highest recognition in research.
I'm going to
And
try and share the screen for a second. I just want to see what I've got here because I've actually got it somewhere. Here we go. Aha!
yeah,
There we are. Can you see it?
yeah.
There you go. Let me make sure
Yeah.
I get it. Okay, so this is the top award from the International Association for Dental Research. So what
Yeah.
was this all about?
I mean, this is an award that you get as a recognition for all your achievements in research.
Mm-hmm.
But the IADR is, I would say, the most important scientific organization in peridontology,
Right.
and there are only a few people that receive this award. One of the biggest names in each field, and
Wow.
I was really very pleased and very very humbled to receive it. Especially this year, it was the centennial anniversary of the IADR. So I mean, you cannot get it a second time, huh? And
No.
either you get it at the centennial or you don't get it. So I was very happy and privileged to get it now. It's this one here on the wall. It's over there.
So you were the third person on the commit. You were only the third person to win this, Leo
No,
Shapiro.
no, 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 no. I mean, the
Oh,
third person from the executive
from the
committee of the.
executive. From
Yeah,
the
yeah.
executive.
No, because the award is since I think the 60s,
Okay.
and one of the biggest names have won it, and of course, it's only one winner per year, so it is, and the competition is very tight, I think.
Now I know why you don't wear a tie and a suit. Look at the picture. Your muscles are bursting. Look what it's doing to the jacket. Your pectorals are pushing out the lapels. Like, this is crazy. Holy cow. No wonder you don't wear suits. And we have one more. Oh, okay, so this is the other one from the EFP. So
Yeah.
live webinar. What's the Bernese concept? What is this?
I mean, this is um, the way on how we treat soft tissue defects.
Hmm.
Um, we work on the modification of the tunnel approach, tunnel technique, and I called it the Bernese concept because, in fact, we almost never do vertical releasing incisions
No.
in more than 90%, 90 or 95% of the cases. I can solve the recessions without incisions, verticals, but just by the modification of the tunnel approach, which seems to function very well, especially in the lower jaw. So in the last 10 years, I treated about 1,000 patients myself,
Wow.
and the results are quite successful. So I consider myself a clinician, clinician and a researcher, and that's why I like translational research. You know,
Right.
yeah,
Wow. So I have a question for you.
yeah,
The fourth paragraph down is interesting. You were quoted as saying, "Giving a lecture to a huge audience while being at the same time alone in a room in front of my computer without seeing any faces was a unique experience."
yeah.
This is what really caught my eye. Trying to compress a treatment philosophy developed over 12 years into 30 minutes was very inspiring but very challenging. Do you feel that you did that? Do you feel that you were able to basically get your message across and people registered even though there was no physical engagement?
I mean, the webinar was fully booked, was sold out. It was, I think, 1,000 people,
Hmm.
uh, and no further places. But I mean, you have to ask the audience whether they have got the message or not. I don't know. I hope, but the feedback was positive. I mean, they have got only positive feedback. I try to do it very clinical oriented, not too much theory, but many clinical cases. And did you watch the webinar?
No, I didn't have the privilege. I'm just curious. You obviously,
It is on YouTube.
I will
YouTube.
find it. I will find it. I'm curious though. You are a very animated individual. From what I understand, even though we're not telling jokes, you're very funny. You love it. You're very funny, and you're obviously very cerebral. But you're very funny and very grounded. That's why you can work with a bazillion people and everybody. You know, it's amazing, right? What did it feel like to be talking about 12 years of your life in a half an hour? And nobody being, you couldn't see people smiling or nodding their head or going, yes, 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 pointing fingers and going, What was that like for you given who you are?
I mean, that's a quite interesting experience, I would say, because you have to focus very strongly. It is, in fact, it is more difficult giving a webinar, I think, than being in the lecture theater,
Mm-hmm.
because then you can get the feedback from the audience, and here I'm alone, despite the fact that everybody is watching me.
Yeah.
I'm alone, and I try to do my best, to get my message through. But I don't see any faces, I don't see any mimics, and I think this is, I mean, it's quite strange. But now I did it about 10 times, so it's getting more and more, um, accustomed. But I would like to see some faces anyway. It's sometimes I didn't even see a person like you in the
Right.
AFP webinar. It was completely without faces, huh? So it was me and the blacks. I mean, my slides, of course, and that's it.
So I have a question for you. I'm going to pick your brain for a minute. I don't know how that translates into German, Hungarian, Romanian. When in North America, it's like we want to pick your brain, but it's actually a nice statement, right? It's not designed to be insulting. You are going to probably have to do this for the foreseeable future, right? There's just no way around. This is what you're going to have to do. This is your reality. We're used to presenting PowerPoint. So we present things in a linear, synchronous manner. and you're presenting it to a computer screen or whatever, and there's 1,000 people watching you. But this is how you would present to them in a room, an auditorium, right?
Yeah.
What, from your perspective, given how engaged you are around the world, you obviously know the people you talk to, you can relate to them on different levels. You have a sense of humor that I understand is second to none. Um, can you conceive of a way that you could change that format so that you don't know, but you can almost feel that the way you're presenting it to them is more of your personality. You're still getting the same message across, but they're feeling you on the other end, even though you can't see them. How would you change your presentation? What would you do? Would you do more animation? Would you do more augmented reality, more 3D? What would you do to make sure they get an understanding of the histology, the biology? Is there something you can conceive?
I mean, in my presentation, I try to integrate anyway as little text as possible.
Okay.
That's very important because people cannot focus on more than 1-2 lines.
Mm-hmm.
Don't overfill the screen with your text. Only some specific points demonstrated by a case, and if possible, a video, surgical video, a short clip, because this combination makes the presentation more alive, and it gives the message. Because I think it's the wrong philosophy to try to compress as much information as possible in one presentation. I'm happy if everybody in the audience gets 1 or 2 messages, but they get it, huh?
They get it, right? Exactly.
And they don't sit there as a plant, so they get the message.
They don't sit there as a plant. Whoa, hello, okay. They're a rubber tree in the corner. A ficus.
I think that's important, and because imagine if we are looking at or watching a presentation,
right?
If I get one message from one presentation, I feel happy.
Yes,
that's amazing. Yeah.
So I have a question. Have you spoken to the IT department out of curiosity? Have you gone to your audiovisual department or your IT department and spoken to some of these fellows who that is their life, right? Playing with computer coding and whatever and videos and whatnot. Have you ever considered speaking to them and saying, here's my problem. I talk about regeneration. I talk about histology. I talk about biology. I talk about growth factors and all of these high hyaluronic acid modifications. If you went to them, like if there's biomedical illustrators, I would think at Barron, could they make it different for you? Could they, taking a non-dentist, like this is, forget a dentist. The dentist, this is our area. But going to a non-dentist, somebody who either knows how to draw, cellular biology, but their focus is all of the technology that makes that compelling and exciting, or also at the same time going to somebody who's into graphic arts and talking to them about what they could contribute to make your presentations distinctive. Is this worth your time?
Yes, I think yes. I mean, I have thought about it, and I think I will move on also in this field because I learned, as I told you before, I learned a lot with this COVID because we had more time, so we needed to contact people. So I think that, in fact, what we have to do is to simplify our presentations. For example, if we talk to an audience that is non-medical or non-dentist audience, by putting maybe more cartoons, trying to have cartoons that everybody understands, simple messages, and maybe combine it with some animations, also some video clips, because I think these simple cartoons or even drawings, that are not so easy to make, but they're very time consuming, and you need a team who can do that.
Right.
I think they may give benefit for the audience, and you can spread the message much better.
Do you miss traveling?
Not yet,
Not
but
yet.
no, not yet. But I was traveling a lot. Almost every weekend we had a meeting. Now everything is canceled.
Right.
Um, I, in fact, I could work quite nicely. Um, could do my research and my patients. I missed treating patients, honestly,
Okay.
but now I can do it. Um, in terms of meetings, I think. As I told you before, is a change because I think as this change will remain because we have to adapt our philosophy in having a combination of a kind of virtual teaching, virtual lectures, virtual meetings,
Hmm.
but also part of it should be presence. Because, for example, if you want to train a surgical technique, you cannot do
Right.
it virtually, but lectures you can do virtually. So I was thinking in offering or in developing maybe a kind of program, a curriculum for dentists all over the world interested in in periodontology,
Hmm.
in giving modules, via webinars or an internet platform. But then for the practical part, they should come to Bern. But of course, if you have 6, 7 such modules, they have to come only once to Bern, and they
Hmm.
don't have to come 6 times. If somebody is located in South America or China or Australia, is another thing to come. Is one thing to come once, or maybe to come 7 times. Is also a matter of traveling, finances, etc., etc.
Well, so there's an interesting question because you're not traveling and your students don't have to rely on. They're basically they're not having to do that. Your grant money goes a lot further, right? Like the grant money that you've gotten to do your research is not going to be expended on expense accounts and things like that.
Yeah,
It's going to be directed much more into pure
yeah,
science. So is that also an enticement? I mean, you don't have to go chase the money so much.
yeah, it can be. Yeah, yeah. I mean, you get also some funding from partners, from foundations, from from industry, etc., and then you can meet them also via Zoom or whatever, or phone conference.
Hmm.
In fact, it doesn't change anything. And if the physical meeting is very important, we can still do it.
You were in Toronto recently.
Yeah, I was there in November, beginning of November.
So what did you think of Toronto in the middle of the winter?
It was November. It was not winter. It
Oh,
was
no,
winter.
so we
Maybe
had no snow this year.
they said is very mild. For me, it was very cold already.
Uh-huh,
You had already some snow. Here in Europe, we didn't have anything, so it was already below zero, I think,
for
two
sure.
or three. But they said that it's very warm. So they said usually you have -20 centigrade, so
It can,
Celsius in the winter. In the
yeah,
winter,
yeah, it can get bad.
so it was. I mean, I didn't have much time to visit, but it was my second time in Toronto because I was there. I think it was in 2007 at the IADR
Uh-huh.
in Toronto, and it was very nice. I visited Niagara Falls. I see a very nice environment. I want to come back.
Okay, you're more than welcome
Maybe not.
anytime.
Maybe not in the mid of winter, but
No,
uh,
come back in the spring. Come back in
yeah,
the spring.
yeah.
I'll take care of things for you. That would be wonderful. So a couple of questions before I let you go. What? So 5 years from now, we have the same conversation. You're talking to me about your research. You're talking to me about what your students are doing. You're talking to me about, you're doing some work with Sophia and with Kadi right now. So there's obviously a new level of what you're doing. I know that there's a lot of work being done on cone beam evaluation of periodontal, regeneration. They're looking at matrices and whatnot. So 5 years from now, we get together. You're in Toronto. I take you out to one of our fantastic restaurants. I take you out wherever there's a theater, whatever it happens to be. And I say, so what's going on, Toni? What's happening in Barron? Like, what are you doing now? So what are you going to be doing in 5 years that's different than today, that you can
Yeah.
see into the future? What are you going to be doing in the way of research that's going to be different?
Working on regeneration, hope maybe have more predictable. treatment philosophies for the sessions, not harvesting any longer any autogenous tissue,
No grafts.
because we have it in the bottle. That would be something that we can maybe achieve in a couple of years, and having some modalities to rebuild the lost periodontal supporting tissues in a predictable way, not only to place by placing a graft in the defect. And of course, having a combination of virtual meetings and direct meetings. And I hope that in 5 years I have even more colleagues that have reached a high level of recognition in the world. A couple of students that are now in the early phase of their developments, and in 5 years they are on the top or close to the top, and this would make me happy.
Do you think it's ever possible to stop periodontal disease completely? Like, could you actually provide a medication, a treatment in a dental office where you monitor things? You know, recession is genetic on some level. There are other factors, of course. But in terms of bone loss and disruption and pocketing, do you think it's possible ever to have a substance that will stop it? I know in Toronto, for example, back in the, I guess I want to say it was back in the late 80s, they were trying to do bacterial replication, like they would take the bacteria that was basically, they remodified it, and replacement therapy. So if you took strep mutans off the teeth and put back strep mutans, it was not karyogenic, you could stop decay. I don't know if it didn't work, obviously, but that was 40 years ago. Do you think it's possible to replace the flora in the mouth with non-mutagenic bacteria that, you know, won't be problematic and won't introduce all kinds of prions into your system, so that you have all this ongoing issue? Do you think that's possible? Replacement therapy for microbiology?
I think that this is not realistic at the moment. I think it is an idealistic goal. They had some vaccines for Porphyromonas gingivalis and so on, but it didn't seem to work.
Didn't work.
But I think what is going to be in a couple of years is more personalized medicine, more a kind of target to treat. So you know exactly where the problem is, you recognize the problem, you treat only that pocket, and you don't need to treat the entire periodontia of the patient. You don't have to treat 30 teeth. You treat very focused, you know. So I think it's going to go towards a more personalized medicine, also in the maintenance phase. And in this way, we can monitor the patients in a better way, more accurately, and provide very fast treatment. And in this way, we can slow down the progression of disease, maybe arrest it completely, control the patients. And if we are successful with the regenerative therapy, we may even build up the tissue to a level that was not possible some decades ago, and then monitor the patients for their lifetime. So I think this is a more realistic way of thinking.
So in reality, you're trying to put yourself out of business.
Yeah, why not?
Why not? Oh, okay. Toni, thank you.
And that would be the ideal goal of a dentist, huh?
Wouldn't that be the ideal goal? Put yourself out of business. My goodness. All the dental companies would go crazy. Like that would go nuts. I can just see Dentsply Sirona shooting people in the streets, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, listen, thank you. I appreciate Kati making the introduction. Go down the hall and tell Sophia to get her act together. I've been told to interview her. She's quite something. I actually spoke to her for 5 minutes, but I guess she didn't like me because she didn't want to come back. But whatever. Tell her I'm a nice guy. She should come back and we'll do the interview.
I do that.
I appreciate that. Toni, thank you so much. This was a delight.
Thank you. It was a pleasure.
I'm honored. Honestly, this was delightful.
Send me the link.
I will send you the link momentarily as soon as it gets squared away. Okay, I will do that.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Bye-bye.